Please be seated. So good Shabbos, everybody.
Good Shabbat.
Particularly those of you who are joining us from home. Please know how grateful we are that you are committed to being with us, even if it's not physically. And then, of course, those of us who are here, thank you for making this service happen. What I want to do is I want to actually pick up in the story. I gave you the opening and the overview of this morning's Torah reading, so I'm not going to go through that again. But what I do want to do is I want to pick up at the part where Joseph brings his father to introduce him to King Pharaoh. Can you imagine? He's very proud. His father's now with him after 22 years, and he wants to bring him to his boss. He's going to meet the boss and the person that made everything happen. Now, can you imagine for a second? Joseph is standing there before the Almighty King. If you were a king or a queen and were being introduced to the father of your prime minister for the very first time, what's the first thing that you would ask him? What is the first thing you would say to him? Probably what you wouldn't say to him is, how old are you? Okay. Probably, that's right. I think I'm right. Most of us wouldn't say that. It's exactly what Pharaoh said to Joseph. I'm reading from the text. Joseph brought his father Jacob, presented him to Pharaoh. Vayivorech Yaakov es Paro, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh, and we'll deal with that in a second. Then it says, Vayomer Paro el Yaakov, and Pharaoh said to Jacob, Kama yemei shenei chayecha. How many is the number of your days? Which is a sort of somewhat roundabout way of how old are you? How many is the days of your years? A wordy way to say how old are you? But why start out with this question? If it was me, or perhaps if it was you, I'm sure you'd say something like, welcome to Egypt. It's an honor to meet you. How do you like your new digs in Goshen? Okay? Or even, perhaps, tell me something. What was Joseph like when he was a little boy? Very strange question. The first words out of Pharaoh's mouth, how old are you? But you know what? Jacob's response was even more bizarre. Because what does he say? He says in response to that question, Vayomer Yaakov el Pharaoh, and Jacob said in response to Pharaoh, Yemei shenei megurei shloshim u'ma'at shana ma'at v'ra'im hayu yemei shnei chayai. Very strange. What that means is, the years of my sojourn on earth are 130. Few and hard have been the years of my life, and nor do they come up to the lifespans of my fathers during their sojourns. Now, if I heard that, I would say, well, the guy seems pretty depressed. Okay, he seems like, you could have said, I'm 130 years old. Fertig, done. Yaakov had a very hard life. It was written on his face. It was written in the way he carried himself. He was only 130. He was considered a boychik if you consider the numbers of his father and grandfather. But he looked even older. And so when Pharaoh saw Jacob for the first time, he was taken aback. My goodness, what happened to this guy? Dude, you don't look so good for 130. How old are you really? Because he looked older than his time. Now clearly, like many of us, Jacob judged his life way too harshly. The stress and the worry of going through difficult times, and he went through difficult times, there's no question, is an internal experience, but it's reflected in our eyes. The psychological response we have to stress, flooding our body with stress hormones, takes a physical toll. Dr. Julie Rusak, who is a dermatologist, describes the impact on our skin, our hair, our nails, the lowest importance to our survival, so that at times of stress, whether it be acute or otherwise, valuable vitamins and minerals are prioritized for our body's vital metabolic processes and the production of stress hormones. Skin is an external barometer of what is happening internally. We often see dull skin at times of fatigue and stress. And we do get more lines and wrinkles from stress as well. The elevated levels of cortisol in our bloodstream result in more breaking down and failing to repair tissues. The same hormones can cause our hair to turn grey and to even fall out. You all know people who have suddenly turned grey or gone white or lost their hair. It causes our nails to weaken. Some people grind their teeth, wearing them down. Carry our tension into our neck and our shoulders. How many times you've got pains in your neck and your shoulders? Stress. And that pain shows on our faces. Now, it's not always obvious, as it was in the case with Jacob. Poor man, it was 130 years and he looked a lot older. Never. But if you really see someone, if you really look at people, not just cursory, oh, how are you this morning? I'm fine, thank you very much. But if you really look at people, you can tell if they're struggling or not. So many people are struggling right now. We are struggling to a greater or lesser degree, each and every one of us. For some of us, the struggle is mostly psychological. We miss our normal lives. We miss socialization. We miss going out to restaurants. We miss coming here together to services. I was saying to Elizabeth last night that we thought the pews were empty before. And now they're tucker empty. Thank God we have you all who are with us online. It can get depressing. The time that we used to spend at the Kiddush after services, sitting down, schmoozing, had to call everybody to get up for Menacha. Or in the mornings after services, the breakfasts. However good or bad the food was, doesn't matter. That was not the issue. It was the fellowship. People who live alone through these times often have a hard struggle with loneliness. And for many people, the struggle is more than psychological. People have lost jobs, they've lost businesses, they've lost homes, they've lost loved ones. Some people have long-term health effects, whether it's from contracting COVID or not. Pay attention. That's why I'm asking you. Pay attention. See the people around you. And if somebody's struggling, be compassionate. Give them whatever kind of support you can, even if you're struggling yourself. You can still give a blessing to someone else. And we see it in this week's Torah portion. What's the first thing the Torah portion tells us? That Jacob stood before Pharaoh. It says, Vayevorech Yaakov es Paro. That Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Even though he's old and in Pharaoh's eyes, way past his years. And even though he's had many struggles, what does he do? What's the first thing he does? He finds it within him to offer a blessing to Pharaoh. You don't have to be in perfect condition yourself to offer a blessing to others. So the question is then, why would Pharaoh even want a blessing from Yaakov? After all, Pharaoh is far more powerful. Why would the more powerful person want a blessing from, the father of his viceroy? Didn't even know him, less of a powerful person. Jewish tradition teaches us that all blessings are powerful. And we all have the power to bless. And that everyone, even God, appreciates a blessing. And why do I say that? I don't say that very lightly, because I don't believe I know what it is that God actually wants from us. Why do I say that? Because if you look in Tractate Brachot, there's a beautiful story which is brought of a time when the high priest, Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha, entered the Kodesh Kadoshim, the holies of holies, the Sanctum Sanctorum, on Yom Kippur. And we're told that there he saw the Holy One seated on high. And God said to him, Yishmael, my son, bless me. And we're told that the high priest responded, may it be your will that your mercy overcome your anger, and may your mercy prevail over your other attributes. And may you act toward your children with the attributes of mercy, and may you enter before them beyond the letter of the law. And the Talmud tells us that the Holy One, blessed be He, nodded his head and accepted the blessing. And this event teaches us that you should not take the blessing of an ordinary person lightly. The Talmud in Chagiga brings another story which I've always been very fond of. It talks about Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi and Rabbi Chia were walking along the road when they arrived at a certain city. And they said, is there a Torah scholar here whom we can go and greet? And the people of the city responded, there is a Torah scholar here, but he is blind. And Rabbi Chia said to Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, you sit here, do not demean your dignified status as Nasi to visit someone beneath your stature. I will go and greet him. And Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi went with him anyway. And together they greeted the blind scholar. And when they were leaving him, he said to them, you greeted one who is seen and does not see. May you be worthy to greet the one who sees and is not seen. And Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi turned to Rabbi Chia and said, now, if I had listened to you and not gone to greet him, I would have missed out on that magnificent blessing. Because that's really what we should all be fighting for, to be one who sees and is not seen. The Talmud teaches that even a poor person who depends on charity, who survives on charity, is obligated to give charity. They're required to give a percentage of whatever they receive to charity. Just as Jacob blessed Pharaoh, even though he was struggling, we too can show compassion. We too can offer a blessing or can be a blessing to somebody else who may be struggling even more. 2020 has without doubt been a difficult year. But with the rollout of the vaccines, there is hope. If we're kind to one another, and we're compassionate to one another, the way we speak to one another, we'll have an easier journey to the other side of this pandemic. Let us not judge our own lives too harshly. Jacob left behind, after all, a legacy. Even in his own mind, he might not have had it. He might not have thought it. He might not have believed it. He left behind a legacy arguably greater than any of the other patriarchs that came before him, or even perhaps even after him. So may we spend this dark time of year reflecting on the seeds of light that we have sown and shared with others. And may we, please God, be inspired to continue all of this in the seasons to come. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.